Winds and spirits and stars, hello. Um, so this video, I guess, is going to be a little bit different. As you can probably see, the avatar is different than my normal Book of Travels videos, although I'm still going to try to keep it quiet and a little bit cozy and focus on the better side of things, I guess, whatever you can call that. Um, so this is problems with Book of Travels and why I still play the game. Um, I guess the distinction here should be um, why I don't stream it as much as, say, I used to. Um, and a good part of that is due to the fact that I've been particularly sad. I've had a lot of my own life stuff going on, but also, as some of you will notice, I've been streaming another game called Sky. Um, and a good reason for that is it has a lot of things in common with Book of Travels. It is a, I guess it is a travel game. It is about spirits and has rich lore and a lot of unanswered lore. And a well written story and a beautiful art style. Um, and Sky has its own problems. And I may mention those in here in comparison to Book of Travels, but mostly I'll try to stick to the issues with this game. Um, so Book of Travels was a a game that I started playing prior to its release, so prior to its EA release. Um, and um, it seemed like it had everything I really liked in a game. It was cooperative. It had a lot of roleplay elements that seemed to be inspired um, by TTRPGs. Um, it was just an all around, I don't know. It looked like a fairy tale I would want to walk through. And as someone who is not necessarily a big fighting games person, which is funny because the other game that I like to play is Elden Ring. It had a lot of unique things that made it a game that I really liked the premise of. And I have had my own issues with it. Um, as you might be able to see, there are and have been glitches in the game. Honestly, I would still say it was better than games like Skyrim, which I've played in the past. And I know that less glitchy than a Bethesda game is not necessarily a bonus because Bethesda games can be notoriously glitchy, but it's also something that had entirely optional combat. You can go through the game without combat at all. And I know that there are a lot of games that are entirely non combat, but not a lot of them are adventure games. And this is an adventure fantasy game that I just. An adventure fantasy game with very beautiful artwork and very well written lore. And that to me has been. I mean, I ended up playing this game at a point where I had a lot of mental health issues in my life. And I did have an issue being obsessed with it at the start. I mean, it is gorgeous. Like, even just walking through some of the smaller areas, the art style and everything is so unique. And I have not found another game that has this kind of detail in it. And I know that a lot of people say that about, most of their favorite games, but um, even look at other beautifully done games like Elden Ring or uh, like other more famous titles and stuff like that. Um, it's all, or The Witcher or anything that I have also briefly played. A lot of it is still very similar, like, I guess, CG realistic art or characters. Um, and to me, that just, like, that is nice, and I like realistic art, and I love the artwork for I like the art books for those games. I've seen and looked through several art books for Dark Souls series as well. But that I always wished that the game itself looked more like the art book. And this to me looks like just art. And so I couldn't find a lot of other games that had the style of art that I liked and also had a story that I am interested in. And I'll get to the story in a bit. Um and had so many small elements that lent itself to having combat, but you being able to completely ignore it if you wanted to. Like, I can completely ignore all the combat in this game if I want. And that is something that I don't get in a lot of other games. Um, And that's kind of sad because I want to play adventure games. I like games with intricate lore and story, and I I just I couldn't find that. Um uh I maybe I just don't have the same kind of I don't know how to describe it. Um Awareness of games that other people do. And I um yeah, so I guess the premise of this is uh, for those who love the game and for those who know the issues with it, and to make people aware of some of the issues within the game. And also maybe some reasons why it is still worth playing, because honestly, I do think it's still worth playing. I don't stream it as much just because I don't get as much joy from streaming it. But yeah, um, I feel like it's still uh, I don't know. Oh boy, this is rough to just kind of think of, because I love this game a lot, and I know I'm biased to it in a sense because I did start playing it very early on, so I know that a lot of things I will give the benefit of the doubt. But I think that the initial team who made the game, the initial artists and writers and programmers who worked on it, and I know that some of the programmers I think are still with Might and Delight, but I know that they care about the game. And I get a little bit emotional when I see people just kind of trash talking the game, because it's a beautiful game and there was a lot of care put into the lore. And early on, when you did get to talk to devs and artists and things like that early on, earlier than I would say 2024, mid 2024, when we could get responses from some of the people who wrote the lore of this game. They loved it. They put their heart and soul into it. And I think it does show. And I think that when so for those who don't know, the team who worked on Book of Travels, I think almost entirely was laid off around the inventory update in in summer 2024. The game since then has only had I I want to say one dev, but I don't know. A very small, like, couple of people working on maintenance and bugs and things like that. And I am not as active in the Discord as I used to be. I mean, the Discord itself is not as active as it used to be, but there are still people there who love the game because we love what it is and what it was. It's still a piece of beautiful artwork, and there still are almost no other games like it. The company honestly made a lot of mistakes, and there apparently was something that happened on Steam which I was unaware of, where one of the higher ups that is no longer with the company was being particularly rude to players, which is completely out of line. I don't know what the full issues were. I don't know exactly what was said. I haven't seen any of those conversations, but that's the gist of it. So I don't know what happened, but I understand someone commenting and saying, yeah, these are like, this company is bad or something like that. I don't think that, first of all, I would say, first of all, it's a company. They're going to want to make money, and they're going to want to do things that help them make money. That's kind of the long and short of it. Companies are usually not the greatest, even when they create beautiful things. And the fact that they let go a lot of the artists and writers that worked on this game, and that we don't have the original, I think almost all of the original team that worked on this game isn't there. I could be wrong about that, but this is things I know from conversations that mods have had in the Discord for the Might and Delight Discord, which you can find. You can go to their store, Steam page, I believe, and their website and join the Discord. And that has made me very upset because I love the art style, and I love the writing, and I love the sound design, and I love everything like that. And I think the company is still working with the same sound designers that did this game. I don't think that the company owns the specific, like, soundtrack, but it's something that kind of makes me very sad and upset to see artists being let go because of mismanagement, basically. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, and acknowledge that it was mismanagement on the company's part. And that, no, the company are not saints. I would argue no company is. Like, their objective is, at the end of the day, to make money. I mean, most of us need to do that to live, in some way, shape, or form. And it's frustrating. and it puts a lot of constraints on what you can and can't do. And I still think that this game is worth the money that I paid for it. I don't think I have any other game that I have over 2,000 hours in. I wish I had actually spent more time playing this game when more people were playing. I fell off of it a little bit during another mental health issue for a bit, and I am sad about that. I feel like I could have done a lot more when prior to the game having the combat update and the inventory update in 2024, which I think is what really kind of sealed the deal for a lot of the issues with this game. For those who don't know, the current inventory can be pretty restrictive, and was initially made so that they could put cooking into the game, which I think if they did would be a nice another layer of things that you could do. But because the game is now what is called just on maintenance, they are mostly working on current bugs and what they can do to fix those. We don't know of any other current content updates that are coming out for the game. And that's something that is just, upsetting and sad to people who love to play it. And it's not the only reason that I haven't been streaming it. There are lots of things to look around in the game. I honestly just like, well, sitting and drinking tea and wandering around. I like to stop and just look at some of the beautiful artwork and scenery and just feel like I can be outside and still not have to worry about the little things like bugs or ticks or things like that. And that's what this game is. It's a beautiful escape. There are several little quests that you can do that help people and spirits move on, and things, just everyday life in the Braided Shore. And that's something that I feel like isn't even really captured in games like Sky, where while you are meant to help the spirits and you're meant to do so by giving up something, it doesn't quite feel the same to me. It is something that I really wish was in more games, that it sort of felt like you could do something and help someone, and you can. There are a couple quests in this game where you can mess it up, and part of my issue with the game has been that, yes, there are certain bugs that can lock you out of quests or other things. There are certain bugs that have locked people out of items, and the combat update did lock a particular item from being accessible, honestly, through the normal quest means that initially it was available through. Those are all issues that I have brought up in the Discord, and I think I will continue to do so. I want to see this game at least reach a state where it is something that anyone can enjoy, offline or not, where it is available to just be experienced, because I still think there are worthwhile experiences in games, and that is why I play games, and I think that's why a lot of people play games, is you want to have a meaningful experience and interaction. Early on, when I played, just bumping into someone and sharing a moment and discovering a new beautiful place with them was something that felt magical. And I still think that discovering places on your own and seeing them for yourself for the first time in game can still be an amazing experience. There are places that I absolutely love, and that when I first discovered, I was floored, honestly. I'm going to one right now. It's called Traveler's Meadow. And the first time I walked into Traveler's Meadow, I was amazed. I was surprised. I thought it was gorgeous. I mean, the whole game, even down to just the UI elements, like the map, are amazing. They're beautiful, like handmade, and it's clear that the artists and art direction for the game was very unique and concise. And again, I haven't found something that does this well in almost any other game. It really is like a second Journey to me, because while Sky might be the spiritual successor to Journey, by the same company, honestly, because of some of the in-app purchase elements and other things that have to do with Sky, and some of the grind that you need to do, well, you don't need to, but that's the thing, is everyone wants to customize your character, and when you make one of the main ways to advance in the game customizing your character, advance in the sense of like a lot of that's a whole different conversation, actually. So point is, Book of Travels doesn't have that, and honestly that was probably part of the problem, is that the game needed to make more money and sell more than it did several years out. And because of that, it just didn't have the same staying power. But everything in this game is still gorgeous, and this place, when I walked in here for the first time, was one of the most amazing areas I've ever seen in a game. And it's a meadow. It's a simple meadow that is a thank you to every one of the backers who backed this game. And I didn't know that when I first came here. I didn't know that Traveler's Meadow was meant for the travelers who helped make this game possible. All of these little flowers are specifically for someone who cared enough about this game to put a lot, or to put essentially their time into it to pay for the Kickstarter. And that is something that still amazes me to this day. When I first walked in here, I just thought, wow, this is gorgeous. But I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what the game meant. I didn't know the meaning behind the flowers. And it is something that has floored me to this day. And while I really wish that the game had done other things, like it had it had used in-app purchases to keep going, or they were able to unlock regions through donations or things like that, I feel like it wouldn't feel quite the same, because it is peaceful here, and it's calm and quiet and gorgeous, and the sounds are amazing. And one of the reasons I post soundscapes and things like that on YouTube from this game is because I want to preserve it in the way that I remember it, in the way that I remember every little sound feeling so natural and in the right place. And yes, there are glitches. There aren't as many sound glitches. I know that there have been a few in certain locations, but the details that work together in this game are just amazing. And I wish that more people had given it a try, because while the original combat system was simplified and not necessarily as complex, it did flow and it did feel like it was a very real, alive part of the game. And I wish they had stuck with that. I wish they had stuck with not the complicated UI, well, not complicated, but the UI elements of the combat system that they have now are gorgeous. They're beautifully drawn, they're like well made, but it also meant that they removed monsters from the world in doing so, and that just took away some of the mythic quality of the game and the magic. And I know that whenever I go to Westwind Shores, which is where I'm going right now, I miss the ominous footfalls of the Katem, the giant driftwood monsters animated by winds that that are malicious, ethereal forces, and I miss that because one of the things I was afraid of early on in the game was combat, because it's not easy to be, the combat isn't, like, the combat was easy-ish, but not in the same way. It was simpler, in that it was very fairly fast, but at the same time, you only had a few numbers that you had to focus on: ward, force, and speed. And if your speed was fast enough, then most of the time, if you had enough force, you were pretty set for combat. Now it's a little bit more complex, and in one way, yes, that's fun and interesting, but in another, it feels like it takes you out of the game and out of the world to me. And having extra UI elements, and arrows pointing to specific enemies just feels like it's not quite right. And now a lot of the enemies you find in the world are just bandits and pirates or corrupt officials, which is not nearly as fun or interesting to me as everyday life, or as it feels less like a fantasy adventure game and more like just, you know, it feels less magical. And so to me, that's something that matters a great deal, because I got this game because it was a game that was folkloric and had intricate lore and monsters that you were meant to, you know, meet and deal with or run away from. And that, to me, made it worth spending a little extra money on. I backed it, not an insane amount. I shouldn't say that. Not a ridiculous amount. But I did pay more than what the game is selling for um, currently in my um, thing, or in where I live. But this kind of lore, this kind of detail that I've gone into with the food and the descriptions, I've gone through it with videos on the Crossings Market, with videos on lore and story throughout the Braided Shore, on the history of it. And that, to me, is part of what makes a game for me as a person. I'm not, I guess, I think one of the typical gamers. I don't necessarily love a lot of AAA titles, even if I am a tabletop role-playing nerd, and I've played D&D and other tabletop games like Pathfinder and Monster of the Week. I didn't really get into Baldur's Gate. I didn't really get into a lot of the Pathfinder video games. I play Elden Ring. I have played through the game multiple times, and I do love it. It's also an extremely well-crafted story. It's beautiful. It has a lot of interesting commentary on morality and everything like that. But for all the intricate plots and hidden stories and quests in Book of Travels, the simple message has always been the journey and the people you meet along the way are more important than the destination. Dreams made together make better worlds was one of the taglines for the trailer, and I think that is still true. It was magical earlier on when you would meet other players for the first time and you had to communicate using symbols. And that's something that I still love. I like not having to talk. I don't like the typical chat feature in most MMOs. I'm not a fan of always having to. I love role playing, but I don't always want to have a long conversation just to decide where to go next. Sometimes I just want to point in a direction and have the person say yes or no. It's as simple as that. And I loved that about this game, that it was just as simple as pointing in a direction and throwing up a question mark and saying yes that way. I liked that. I thought it was interesting, and at the time I had never played Sky, so I didn't realize that other games used the like little emotes as a chat function. I know that Meadow, the another game by Might and Delight, who makes Book of Travels, does a similar thing. And I enjoyed. I found it interesting. I when they added teleportation into the game, I'm glad that they added a teleport spell that you can find that takes you back to the train station, because that is where most of your items are held. But also, I'm glad that the other teleportation spells are mostly random, aside from a few important locations. It is random where you get teleported to. And that's something that I like. I've always liked. And I think that it's nice to have a game that does that. I prefer that, actually. I think that it does get tedious walking around, and I think that that isn't necessarily for everyone. Do I think that they could have implemented teleport mechanics sooner? Yes. A spell that lets you travel to certain areas. Yeah, but do I immediately think that Failed Gate should take you just where you want to go? No. But the problem with a lot of games that want you to slow down is that, I mean, life doesn't want you to slow down. The world doesn't want you to, and that can get difficult. In other games that are longer term, they have in-app purchases and daily quests or things to keep people logging in, and all of that just to keep your attention. But Book of Travels is something that you can pick up and put down and decide where you're going to wander to. And part of the problems is, yeah, there's, I mean, I would argue there's a lot in the game to do. But games getting bigger and bigger isn't necessarily a good thing. I am sorry I missed this. Since this isn't my standard video, I will address chat directly in the MMOs in general don't strike me, is something Xanth said in chat. And yeah, I am not, I used to play MMOs. I had friends that played Final Fantasy XIV. I played it for a short period of time and then stopped. I've played other MMOs for a short period of time and then stopped. And I do find that they just don't do it for me the same way that Book of Travels does. And the way that this game is constructed just makes it feel better to me. And maybe it's because I am not necessarily always looking for a combat MMO. Like, yes, I like interesting and well done combat. Heck, I have played through Elden Ring and beat Consort Radon at least 3 to 4 times now. I don't remember exactly. I've got more than one save file, but I have I'm in New Game Plus on a couple of my save files. So yeah, I don't necessarily. I feel like this is a interactive multi-person. I would not say massive. I do think tiny multiplayer is accurate. At least it was when the game, for the majority of the game's time it's been out. Now there are much fewer people playing, and so yes, the chances of you bumping into someone are not high, but at the same time you can still find some people on the Discord that still play. Whether you are playing at the same time, again, is another life difficulty, but to me, I ran around with friends in this game and found some amazing things, and the feelings of discovery and of triumph when I finally did fight my first monster, and, you know, worry when I, for the first time, hit 1 life pedal and knew that, and permadeath used to be a thing, so you would permanently become a ghost if your character died. That is not the case anymore, which I think is a good thing, especially with the way the game is now. But the game can't. The problem is, part of the function of the game was that you could just bump into other people and go on an adventure with them. And that is something that is a little bit more lost now that you don't have as many people playing. Do I want to see more people playing the game? Yeah, I think that there are people who don't even game who could find this game interesting. People who aren't used to games, who might find it fun to just be able to walk around and experience a beautiful hand-painted world. And I think that that is something that I really wish would continue. I hope that in preserving the game, which is what the company says they are going to do, they say that they are working on preservation for the game. that they release an offline version that allows for player hosting so that you can still play with other people and you can still choose to play with friends. And that is something that I really hope happens. Um, because I believe that since that was part of the game mechanics, it is still important to have that in the game. Um, that it's still a part of the game that should stay. Um, do I wish that certain things were different? Yes. I mean, I wish that the um I wish that the volume system that they implemented for the game was not implemented because they don't have cooking in the game yet, so I don't see how keeping cooking or the inventory update that did cooking is a good thing. Can they roll that back? Probably not without people losing items, which is another big difficulty. And that's just something that is not necessarily anything anyone can do. It's a wait and see situation as to what functions they will continue to have in game. I mean, like I said, as it stands right now, and this might be, again, my bias as someone having played since before the combat update and before the inventory update, that the game is still worth playing. There are very few games that offer the ability to just avoid combat entirely and walk through a beautiful, gorgeous world, just making tea and trading items. But it's also a game where it is probably not going to be finished. Is it worth the 30 something dollars I spent on it? 30 USD or 35 USD? Actually more because I bought a specific backer kit. Yeah, I think it is. I have, like I said, I have over 2,000 hours in this game. It it is, but if you approach it as a multiplayer game, I think, and if you are looking for a combat heavy game, this is not the game for you. And I understand that it's not the game for a lot of people who want combat, who want to feel like their choices are directly impacting the story, because it is very much so a storytelling game in that it tells you about the world and it lets you imagine what your character's place in it would be. And for me, as someone who loves role playing, as someone who loves writing stories, that is great. I like imagining a backstory for my character and making up their own history and things like that. I enjoy that greatly. I think some of the best times I've had are when I've drawn my character interacting with other people that I met that I ended up being friends with or talking to through the Discord or other things like that. But it is a game that I think does heavily lean on the Discord and lean on other methods of communication. And it's not an MMO in the way that most places or most games are MMOs. It does have a multiplayer option as of right now. I do not know if that will always be the case, and so I would say if you're looking for an MMO, I don't think this is a game to look at. And that's part of the reason why I actually tagged this under MMO, because I think it is still listed that way in the Steam store. I don't think that... I think online co-op is the best that you can describe it as, because it is somewhere between a single player and online co-op experience. There is, I think, maybe a 7 to 10 player limit on each server. Depending on the server, and by limit I mean just each instance in a given regional server there before another instance is created. So I wouldn't play it if you're looking for that kind of thing. And I wouldn't play it if you don't think you're going to be engrossed by the story. I mean, a good portion of this game is travel and walking and discovering things and talking to NPCs, and it does not have its own quest system. It doesn't have a tracker. You have a journal that you can access through this menu that you can make. I have my own little to-do list, but you do not get to it doesn't automatically record things for you. And to me, that's a little bit of an annoyance. I prefer to be able to put down and pick up my games as I want, and if I have to remember what I was doing in a game, that's not always the best. But it is well worth the beauty and the just the omen, who are these adorable little spirits that just run around everywhere, that are made of natural elements like rock and grass and tea. It has a very almost animistic type of folklore to the world. And I think that if you are, like, for me, any way that the game is preserved is probably going to be worth it. I will probably still play this game, even if I do not get to play with my friends, or if I am not able to do multiplayer anymore. I probably will go back and keep coming back to looking at this game and just wandering around and drinking tea and reading through items and seeing if there are any quests that I missed. I still haven't played through all of the quests. I haven't recorded all of the quests that I wanted to record, because there are some main story, I guess there is no main story, but more main plot focused quests that I haven't put up yet because I didn't finish them. Well, I did. I finished them as much as I could, but not on certain not on certain characters. And so I will probably do that. I find the simple little things and funny descriptions. The snoring of the warden is not too dissimilar to the shrieks of a falling tree, to be really interesting and charming and occasionally tongue-in-cheek and very amazing. I find the places like this that you can just find and go to very interesting. I find the art style absolutely gorgeous, and the fact that I can just walk through the world. I'm pretty sure there are still a couple of items I've yet to collect across the few characters that I have. I try to collect as much lore information as I can, and some of those items are RNG based, so I don't have, unless I can get them to drop, I don't have access to them. I do hope that they implement a few more content updates. There are no plans for that as far as I know, but I also know that there are several stretch goals in the Kickstarter that were not met. So The most natural of substance teapots, yes, because tea is the best thing in the world. I also don't have very many games where I can go and cosplay as Uncle Iroh if I really want to, and this game really lets me just wander around and drink tea. And sit in beautiful locations while I do so. And that's something that I find very, very calming and relaxing. And I think maybe some people have had glitches worse than me, but when the inventory update happened, I also couldn't access my characters because there were certain characters where if you had them and had a lot of inventory, the character wouldn't load. And so during the inventory update, I did not have access to most of the characters I had created. I actually created a new character and started playing again, and that was still worth it. I liked getting to play through the game again because they had made new updates and the intro was a little different. And am I going to play even without new updates? Yeah, I mean, there are a few things I haven't done yet, and there might still be a few things I haven't found yet, which is even more ridiculous. There are so many little things in this game, and even when there were a lot of people playing, I still feel like there weren't enough people to really find everything. And while I don't mind spoilers, I also just feel like that it didn't necessarily get as many people problem solving or looking for places and things like that. And so, yeah, even if I've seen most of what's in the game, yeah, Xanth, oof, I also, yeah, the inventory update was really rough, and if they weren't going to add, if they do not add cooking to the game, after the inventory update, I will, that's another thing I'm a bit upset about, more than a bit. I don't think there was any reason to do the inventory update if cooking was not immediately around the corner. And that was poor planning on their part. So, do I understand why several people have stopped playing the game? Yes. Do I understand why several people refuse to play the game because they disagree with how the company handled their policies? Yes, I do. There are several reasons to not support companies, and the way that this company let go of the writers and artists that helped make this beautiful world possible greatly upsets me. If I am remembering correctly, that they do still have they do still have an IT team, but it's always frustrating to me as someone who likes to draw when your first thing is to get rid of the team that helped make something like this possible, but I understand why. I understand that they had their own financial issues at that point, and that they had gotten the assets and other things from the artists that they thought they could. If possible, I do try to, I am trying to find the artists. I know that the writer who did a lot of the lore, I believe his name is Simon, is still writing, but is not online really, not in the same way that the artists for the game might still be posting art or working on other things. So I will probably try to keep in touch with him, just to see if he has any future projects he's working on, because the lore and the art are a good portion of why I love this game. And the fact that I could be creative enough to create my own character and walk around the world in character and interact with others in character and not have to talk is something that I really appreciate. I yeah, I do not think that this game is for everyone, and I do think that it is important to be open and transparent about the fact that the game is only on maintenance right now, and that they are just looking to preserve it. And I hope that they do, because it's a beautiful game that I think more people should experience. And I think it's still worth playing, is, I guess, my takeaway. Because, at least for me, I can't go to a spot nearly as beautiful as this out of the house. I am disabled. I do not have the capacity to go outside as often as I would like. So, this game has been a great gift to my mental health in being able to hear the birds and rustling leaves and a gorgeous soundtrack, and not have the burden of in-app purchases and things like that. If it meant that I could explore the other regions of the game, would I pay to? Probably. If it meant that I could go to the places that I have heard about and read about in texts from NPCs and from fragments of diary pages and things like that, yes, I absolutely love this world. But I also know that I will be very cautious in recommending this game in the future, because I know that it's not necessarily a game that everybody will love. If you are curious about it, you can still refund it if you play, I think, under 20 hours. I forget what Steam's policy on game refunds is. But if you watch videos on it and you like the same things I like in gaming and like discovering things for yourself in a game where not everything is spelled out for you, then yeah, I think it's a fun, interesting, gorgeous game that has an amazing soundtrack. So, if anything, the soundtrack itself is honestly just worth the money, even if you don't keep the game on it. Just the soundtrack is gorgeous. Um, but I also understand the people who are just mad at the company, and um, it's a difficult situation, and I hope that more people can look at it with that kind of nuance, and that it's difficult to make money in games, and that's being felt by, I think, all game companies, not just indie ones. But that does mean that smaller companies are going to need more support, and smaller developers are going to need more support. Um, I have other games that I have played, such as Slay the Princess and Scarlet Hollow, that are visual novels that are also extremely good storytelling games that create tension without combat. But I know that that is not necessarily for everyone. And also, I find very few fantasy adventure games without combat, or at least with the option to avoid combat. If you have recommendations, I'm willing to listen to them. I just can't. I'm not going to stop streaming this game because I want to preserve the beauty that people put into it, and the detail and care that the artists and writers added to this game. So, if I can, I will update with one of the main quest lines soon. But in the meantime, please be well, be responsible with your money, and honestly, there are ways to support the artists, but not nearly as many, and I can only do so at this point, I feel, by preserving all of the gorgeous scenery like this in game. So, with that out of the way, this long ramble, I need to stop. So, I will hopefully see you back here at some point, with my normal avatar, doing a normal Book of Travels stream, uh, with lore and story, and maybe even a little bit more commentary on how I like stories to be told and what I find interesting about that. Thank you, and if you made it this far somehow, that's I hats off to you. This was a long ramble, so please, everyone, safe travels.